Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Dime Time. This time we are reviewing the second round matchup between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors. If you caught my first round reviews of both these matchups, you will realize that both my predictions were bang on. Now, the Cavaliers' sweep of the Pacers is a bit misleading. I expected the Cavaliers to sweep the Pacers. I also said that the Pacers would bring the fight to the Cavaliers, and that's exactly what happened because the Cavs won that series in 4 games, but the difference of winning points was just 16 points across 4 games. That shows how hard the Pacers pushed the Cavaliers to the edge and how the Cavaliers had to hold back a resilient effort from the Pacers to sweep them in 4 games. Overall, the Cavaliers played this series as you expected. Now they started off the season great, but in the last 46 games of the season became a very mediocre team, and that's pretty much how they played most of this series. So don't let this sweep fool you into thinking that the Cavs have suddenly found their stride. Their numbers, both offensively and defensively, for this season are just about marginally better than the regular season numbers. This has got less to do with the Pacers being a really good team and more to do with the Cavs still finding their groove and finding a way to play together as a team and win games. LeBron James was incredible this series. He is now on a 21 game winning streak in first round playoff games. And obviously, that first round, including the current 4 game sweep against the Pacers. Now, remember, this is the first time in franchise history the Pacers have been swept. LeBron James's numbers for this series are beyond ridiculous. Now you have to remember this is a 31-year-old guy who has close to 1100 games across 11 seasons on his legs right now, and he still managed to average 32.8 points a game, 9 assists a game, 9.8 rebounds a game, 3 steals a game and 2 blocks a game while shooting 54% from the field and 45% from three-point line. This man is beyond superhuman. The only chink in his armor was that he made just about 50% of his free throws. And if that number were any higher, say at about 70 or 80, he would have averaged 35 points per game this series. Can you even fathom that kind of scoring power? A bigger cause for concern for the Cavaliers is not LeBron, but the play of his supporting cast. Kyrie Irving, yes, scored 25 points a game, but he was just about average. A big concern for Kyrie Irving is the fact that he shot just 22% from the three-point line, and this is after shooting more than 40% from the three-point line during the regular season. If Kyrie Irving doesn't sort his shot out, I don't necessarily see the Cavs making a deep playoff run here. Kevin Love too had a solid series, but by his standards, it was mediocre or maybe average. And even the Cavs bench really didn't show up. Now that could be a factor of LeBron, Kyrie, and Love taking on such a big scoring load. But the Pacers bench is actually a very average bench. I think they're a below average bench. So for them to outscore the Cavs bench in 4 games is a cause for concern for the Cavs moving ahead in the playoffs. That said, they did sweep the Pacers. The Raptors, as I predicted, had their hands full with the young upstart Milwaukee Bucks. Had a play gone here or there, had 1 or 2 plays gone here or there, I think we would have been looking at a Game 7, and that wouldn't have been good for the Raptors. Individually, the Raptors all had subpar numbers compared to what their regular season average was, whether it be Lowry, whether it be DeRozan, whether it be Ibaka, whether it be the rest of their team. Now, part of that could be because the series in general was a low-scoring series, but I would rather think the reason why these guys performed at that level was because the Bucks, with their sheer size and length, have played some of the most relentless defense you would have seen across these playoffs. What stood out was that even the Raptors as a team had their numbers fall way below their regular season averages, and that is a cause for concern for the Raptors moving ahead. There is, of course, some good news. DeMar DeRozan has become a clear number one option on offense for the Raptors, and why is that good news? Because that allows their all-star Kyle Lowry to take off for a couple of possessions a game, allowing him to save his energy as the game goes on and as the series goes on. The problem though is that Kyle Lowry is still to show up in a meaningful way during his playoff career. Even whether you consider last season's playoffs or this season's playoffs, Kyle Lowry, every great player has an extra gear they shift into. I mean, of course, unless you're Russell Westbrook, because then you're always playing in sixth gear. But with every great player, they always have a gear to shift to when the playoffs come around. They always push their numbers higher. If not as much as they scored in the regular season, they're definitely higher. Kyle Lowry has done none of that over the past 2 seasons, and we are all still waiting. We, including the Raptors fans, are still waiting for Kyle Lowry to show up in a big way in the playoffs. It almost seems like Lowry seems to downshift during the playoffs, and that cannot be good for his future with the franchise, considering now they have a legit number one option in DeMar DeRozan. The Raptors are still finding their groove they're still finding their offense around the new mid-season acquisition of Serge Ibaka. But the Bucks, with their size, length, and their speed and their relentlessness, wasn't the team that you're going to experiment with. And there's no way you're going to be able to experiment with new offensive rotations against a team that was hungry to beat you and move to the second round of the playoffs. This was a tough series for the Raptors, and there were glaring signs throughout the series that the Raptors just did not win this, they survived this. In the end, the Raptors' playoff experience showed in critical points during the series, and they did finish off the Bucks in 6 games. Coming to the head-to-head matchup for the regular season between these two teams, the Cavs swept the Raptors. Now, there was only one blowout. That was the game which the Raptors won, and none of the Cavs' big three were on court. That is not to say that the Raptors will fold up in this series. As recently as last season, the same Raptors team, as a matter of fact, now the Raptors team are upgraded. So a slightly downgraded Raptors team took this same Cavaliers team to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. This is not a team to be trifled with. The Cavs were red hot during the playoffs last season, and the Raptors were really tough team to play. So it was, in my opinion, it was a little easier to predict that the Cavs would beat the Raptors, although the Raptors would put up some kind of a fight. But it was easier to predict that the Cavs would take care of business against the Raptors in 6 games. This season, though, that's a little harder to predict. Both teams are not at their best, and outside of James, even their players are not at their best. Other than DeRozan averaging nearly 30 points a game against the Cavaliers during the regular season, there isn't any other stat that kind of stands out when you compare the regular season matchups of these two teams. But yes, there are individual matchups to look out for. I mean, whether it is James versus DeRozan, whether it is Lowry versus Irving, whether it is Kevin Love, whether it's Serge Ibaka versus Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson, I think this is going to be an interesting. I mean, even PJ Tucker versus J.R. Smith. I think this is an interesting series to look forward to. Coming to the concerns for the Raptors, their offensive stagnation is a huge concern. They average just about 93 points a game on 44% shooting in the series. Compare that to nearly 107 points a game on 47% shooting during the regular season, and you begin to see why the Raptors have a lot of ground to catch up on if they decide they want to make a series out of this against the Cavs. Their stars have not shown up in a very meaningful way. The rest of the team and the bench is yet to show up in a meaningful way. But we all know that better competition also tends to have players and have stars step up their game, and one can only hope, the Raptors fans can only hope, that playing a more elite, stronger team a stronger team like the Cavs will allow or push the Raptors stars and the rest of the team to elevate their game. The good news for the Raptors is they have the second best defensive rating in the playoffs this far. Yes, part of that could be because of the low scoring series against the Bucks, but they did have some great signs of brilliant defensive play during that series. They also have a ton of bodies to throw at LeBron James, whether it's PJ Tucker, whether it's Serge Ibaka, whether it's even DeMar DeRozan occasionally during the game. And that should allow them to kind of contain the threat that LeBron James is. Also, what's really, really key here is that the Raptors have not played a fully healthy Cavs team with the new acquisition of Serge Ibaka. With Ibaka on the Raptors, I believe this is going to be a far closer series. Coming to the concerns for the Cavaliers, as superhuman as LeBron James is, and I mentioned earlier how superhuman he is, he averaged 44 minutes a game in the series against the Pacers. That's coming from averaging more than 40 minutes a game during the regular season series. Now that will eventually show up down the line. And if the Cavs don't want that kind of fatigue to show up on LeBron James, then Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love need to step up and actually take a bigger role in offensive rotations during this series. Defensively too, LeBron James is still one of the top 5 defenders in the league. He's an elite defender. He was doing damage during the Pacers series, but the rest of the team need to show some commitment if they want to make a series out of this. Well, the good news for the Cavs is when they hit their threes, they are the most devastating team, one of the most devastating teams in the league. They still have 3 of the 5 best players of the series, and the biggest advantage they have in this matchup is, well, they have LeBron James. I say Cavaliers in 7. Thank you for watching. If you think you got something better to say, please do leave a comment and definitely check out my other playoff preview videos.